We were wrong about the Afton family. The family that we all thought were left behind with the old era of the FNAF franchise are actually still here. And not only do I believe they are either alive or present in other characters, but I also believe they have always meant to have major roles in FNAF Security Breach and were all hidden in plain sight. So in this video, I'm going to go over all of the evidence proving that they're still here and if they're going to return in any future projects. So please consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and let's uncover the truth about the Afton family in FNAF Security Breach. When looking at the Afton family, I'm only going to cover the members who have been confirmed to exist, which immediately eliminates Miss Afton as someone I'm going to go over. Sure, there is some small evidence that she did exist and that she might even be the secret CEO of the Pizzaplex, like game theory's popular theory suggests. But because we've never actually seen her in any games, mini-games, or even endings, I'm only going to cover the 4 main members instead: William, Michael, the Crying Child, and Elizabeth Afton. These 4 characters have been the foundation to this series and each play a role in the games they're featured in. So one by one, where can we now find them in the Pizzaplex? Well, let's first go over the last time we saw them and why it's hard to believe they would even come back. Starting with William Afton, we last saw him as Scrap Chap in Pizzeria Simulator and as a soul stuck in purgatory. In Ultimate Custom Night, we learn William is being tortured by his own creations and by the second spearing Golden Freddy, the one you should not have killed. Michael Afton was last seen in Pizzeria Simulator as well, as he worked for the manager of the pizzeria, gathering all remaining animatronics for one big party on Saturday, which was to burn them all, freeing their souls. But he would burn with them as well, and with the memory of Fazbear's entertainment.
And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be.
The Crying Child was the victim of the Bite of 83 and was the other soul possessing Golden Freddy, but it's assumed that his soul was freed in FNAF 3 and in the Happiest Day minigame, when he was finally given the birthday party that was taken away from him in FNAF 4, finally putting him and all the pain he suffered to rest. We can also assume that he possesses Golden Freddy in FNAF 1 and 2, while the other spirit possesses the animatronic in Ultimate Custom Night. Finally, Elizabeth Afton possesses Circus Baby in Sister Location after she was left in a room with this animatronic, causing her to be scooped. We last saw Circus Baby in Pizzeria Simulator, now a Scrap Baby. She was one of the final animatronics lured to the pizzeria who was burned, freeing her soul from the animatronic. So based on everything we now know, it really does look like all of these characters were finally put to rest or are now stuck. And the last time we saw most of them were in FNAF 6 and Ultimate Custom Night. But now we can look at how they all actually return in the new era of the franchise and in Security Breach, starting with William Afton, who is now Glitchtrap. In Help Wanted, we learned that old circuit boards were used when creating the VR game, and it's believed that the circuits board contained the virtual essence or spirit of William Afton, as the code then becomes a virus in the form of Glitchtrap. Glitchtrap would recreate the missing children's incident in the ending where he stuffs a player into an animatronic, and he takes over the mind of Vanessa, a playtester, and forces her to be his puppet in the real world. So she dons the personality of Annie, even wearing a costume similar to Spring Bonnie. She would kidnap children and murder them just like William, so Glitchtrap and Vanny are the 2 ways we already see William Afton return. It's not clear how or why, but William was able to escape the purgatory and possess an old circuit board from Fazbear's. But where we physically see him return and what I really want to focus on is Burntrap. Burntrap was featured as one of the main antagonists in Security Breach and was even featured in his own ending. Burntrap is revealed to be kept in a charging station in the pizzeria under the Pizzaplex, the same pizzeria from FNAF 6. He attempts to take control of Freddy using monitors and attempts to capture Gregory for some unknown reason. But he was ultimately defeated when Gregory burnt him and the pizzeria down using burners that were in Burntrap's room. But it's worth mentioning that the Burntrap ending isn't actually canon, meaning he was never burned in the pizzeria. But this still means that he was down in the sinkhole and inside of the charging station at one point. Burntrap has a physical appearance that resembles both Springtrap and Scraptrap. His suit is olive and dark yellow in color with an exposed human jawbone with teeth. His endoskeleton resembles a combination of the Glamrock animatronics and a Springlock endoskeleton. His eyes are pitch black with purple glowing pupils. His right foot's endoskeleton is completely exposed while his left foot still has its costume covering. Personally, I believe his remains are from the pizzeria in the sinkhole, as his flesh and animatronic parts were screwed together with metal plates. But where did they get the parts of his costume to create him? Well, what if it came from Scraptrap? The 2 costumes look similar in color, texture, and the reason it's more withered than Scraptrap is because of the FNAF Pizzaplex fire, where we can assume that Scrapchat was severely burned, which is why parts of his costume were taken to create Burn Trap. They were just screwed together with metal plates. Scrapchat would have been down there in the sinkhole under the Pizzaplex, and again the flesh from Burn Trap is actually William Afton's flesh from Scrapchat that was used for a new body, and that's why they would even need a charging station to keep him alive. But addressing the giant elephant mascot suit in the room, isn't Burn Trap supposed to be the Mimic? Well, I've actually made a few videos on this topic, but personally I don't think these two are the same, and I think they've always meant to be different characters. Well, when looking at the similarities, both characters are found in the same underground area beneath the Pizzaplex. Both have mismatched legs, similar poses, and certain shared endoskeleton features. A purple glow effect and vent claw marks appear in the areas connected to both characters. The tales from the Pizzaplex novels show the Mimic can change body shape and size to fit into suits. He can also fuse with human flesh, matching Burn Trap's organic parts. And in Tiger Rock, the Mimic fuses with a person while in a costume, paralleling Burn Trap's appearance. But at the same time, there are drastic differences that to me prove they can't be the same, starting with the designs. Burn Trap uses a modern Glamrock Enzo, while Mimic uses an older, thinner, mixed part Endo. Burn Trap has intentionally attached flesh and armor plating. Mimic doesn't rely on a charging station while Burn Trap does to stay alive. Their movement and behavior are also different. Burn Trap is slow, fragile, and weak. Mimic is fast, agile, and strong. It's also worth mentioning that Burn Trap's suit or costume isn't found anywhere in Ruin. In the Tiger Rock epilogue that I mentioned earlier, the Mimic fuses with a dog costume, not a rabbit like Burn Trap. Burn Trap's design as a whole seems to be on purpose, not an accident revolving around the Mimic. And finally, the purple glow effect appears in other parts of the pizzeria, like in the caves, making it unreliable evidence. So I still believe William was always meant to be Burn Trap and that he did come back. William Afton would once return as the main antagonist, as he always comes back, and because of the effects of his past actions. William's ability to keep coming back is most likely tied to the concept of agony, a type of energy or soul essence that allows him to survive death and possess other beings or objects. His return can also be seen as a recurring theme, as each game he's in deep dives into the idea of the consequences of William's past actions. Meaning so far, 1 out of the 4 members is in Security Breach and plays a major role, but what about the next member, Michael Afton? Well, I believe I can also prove once and for all that Michael Afton has always been alive and has been right under our noses the entire time. In the Pizzaplex, this room was found as it's a 1-for-1 replica of Michael's room from FNAF's sister location. But why would the Pizzaplex make a room from the Afton family's house if no one would ever see it or know about it? Well, the consensus is that it belonged to Michael. The TV even works, and there's real popcorn, which to me would imply he's been there frequently or that he even lives there. In the room, there's also this cryptic message. When decoded, it reads a long message, but I want to focus on only the beginning. It reads, "Break and mend, I built the breath." Mend is defined as rebuilding and to restore. Building the breath is referring to giving something life. So to me, this is Michael telling us that he had a part in the creation of the Pizzaplex, and more specifically, he created the animatronics. He gave them life. We even see a lot of trash right outside the room, so we can assume this all came from Michael, and it's even more proof he was living there for a long time. There's also this small room ahead of Michael's, where it looks like it was a room where he was building or experimenting with staff pots, also further proving the idea that Michael had some role in creating the Rockstars, their Endos, or the staff pots. In Rockstar Row, which is a museum that holds old and new artifacts, we see things like animatronic parts, posters, drawings, and cardboard cutouts of different characters, but one display might prove Michael is still alive. This display that has 2 artifacts from FNAF 4. These are 2 toys from the Crying Child's room. Except that this room isn't the Crying Child's, it's actually Michael's. Because as a popular theory suggests, and one I even cover in other videos, we play as Michael in FNAF 4, meaning these are his toys. Who else in the entire franchise would want to display something from the Afton family house if the artifacts didn't directly belong to them? I think this is Michael Afton displaying these toys as a form of nostalgia for him and as something to remember. And when looking at one of the security offices, I believe we actually get our first look at what Michael Afton looks like, and at his design with the Steel Wolf FNAF games. Next to the computers, we find this framed photo of 2 people with writing under it. Taking a closer look, both people are wearing a Glamrock Freddy themed mask, and the writing reads Fred Masquerade, and the date under it looks like it reads 2035. 2035 could actually be the year Security Breach takes place, or it could be something else and not a year, like a signature. But when looking at the 2 people, they are both wearing purple jackets and a mask covering their faces, but we can still see their necks and their skin tones. The person on the left is wearing a flannel, and it actually looks very similar to the one Vanessa's wearing in the sad ending from Ruin. And when comparing their skin tones, they also look very similar. So could this person be Vanessa? But I mostly want to focus on who's to the right. When looking at their neck, it has a very different skin tone compared to the person to the left. It almost appears to be even purple. A similar shade of purple as the jacket. And who else has purple skin? Well, that's simply Michael Afton. No one else in the franchise literally has purple skin like Michael. And not only that, but the Freddy mask is also a hint to this character. Vanessa does have a Glamrock Freddy mask as it resembles the shape and design of the character's head. But comparing it to Michael's, the mask has sharper cheeks, a longer snout, and smaller eyes. If anything, it looks like it's actually a Foxy mask, just redesigned to have a Glamrock Freddy design. And Michael himself wore a Foxy mask in FNAF 4, and Foxy has always been a way to represent this character. This Foxy mask and skin tone are explicitly telling us that this is Michael Afton and that he's still alive. We all just missed it. This would mean that he's been in contact with Vanessa and it even looks like they're friends. And for a smaller hint, the Ready Masquerade is defined as an event where people wear masks and hide their identities or appearances, and this is exactly what Michael has done throughout his entire journey. He used the alias Mike Schmidt in the first game, Fritz Smith in the second game, and he continues to use the name Fritz even in Security Breach, but I'll get back to the sticky notes soon. So this masquerade event could be another hint of Michael and his actions. And when looking at the FNAF 6 pizzeria, we also find a small detail that could be related to Michael. In the room where Gregory defeats Springtrap, and in this hole of this wall, we find a Foxy plushie next to an endoskeleton's head. Because we already know Foxy and this character can represent Michael, what if this plushie was also an Easter egg to this character? That's why it's in the FNAF 6 pizzeria, as that's where he would have supposedly died. Now, the endoskeleton head could be an Easter egg to the Bite of 83, as the crying child was bitten on the head. So this endo head being next to the Foxy plush could be a reference to Michael being the cause to the crying child being bitten on the head and almost losing it. But now when looking at the final but most compelling evidence from Security Breach, let's look at this simple sticky note, meeting with Smith at 5 PM. Smith could be anyone, so to connect it to Michael, let's go all the way back to Five Nights at Freddy's 2. On nights 1 through 6, we play as a security guard named Jeremy Fitzgerald, but then suddenly on night 7, we play as someone named Fritz Smith. Fritz Smith is believed to be an alias for Michael Afton when he secretly worked there, a name similar to Mike Schmidt, which was his alias when he worked in the first pizzeria in the first FNAF game. So if Fritz Smith really is Michael Afton, then could this meeting also be referring to Michael? Again, this would make sense, as if he did work in the Pizzaplex and had a major role in it, then of course he would be in meetings, of course he would need to meet with different people, of course he would still be alive. So when looking at all the evidence, I think Michael survived the FNAF 6 fire and intentionally escaped. He's still alive and never died. For a quick reminder, you can now become a member of the channel. Members will have a chance at being shouted out at the beginning of every single video, there will be member-only polls where you can decide a future video, and finally, members will have priority to comments on all of my videos. So you can always consider joining by clicking the join button on my channel page or by clicking the link in the bio, and thank you all for your support. But now moving on to the two youngest children of William, I think they return in much more complicated ways, and the answers to their returns aren't as direct as William's and Michael's. Starting with the crying child, some theories believe that it comes back in the form of Gregory, but I have to disagree, and I think it comes back in a form which is closer to Glamrock Freddy. So first, here's why I don't think the crying child can be the same as Gregory. Besides their similar designs that aren't close enough to make a definitive decision, their characteristics are nothing alike. In FNAF 4, the crying child was a kid who was terrified of the animatronics. In multiple minigames, we would see him try and do everything in his power to avoid them, but when he couldn't, he would break down and begin to cry, hence the name. Even when Michael and his friends threw the crying child into the mouth of Fredberg, he was obviously crying, and again, he was always scared of these animatronics. But in Security Breach, Gregory feels like the exact opposite. We know he never once feels scared of the animatronics, as he is able to destroy all of the main ones and steal parts from them. And he even crawls inside of Freddy when he's shut off, so again, they're different in the sense that their personalities never feel alike. If anything, I think the crying child's personality resembles closer to Glamrock Freddy, which would technically make him Golden Freddy. Glamrock Freddy shows empathy, fear, and even trauma-like responses, which is very unrobotic and unheard of. When he enters the Endo nursery, he completely shuts down, saying things like, "This is where I was made, and I don't think I'm Freddy." These lines imply he's more than just code or an animatronic. Maybe there's a human memory or emotional imprint inside of him. A great video that goes over Freddy by underscore, make sure to check out the full video, explores the Endo daycare and how they program the animatronics. I also want to cover this room and how it didn't just program Freddy to behave like the others. It could have fed him data, memories, or personality patterns from a real child, one we're even familiar with. It could have been possible that the crying child's memories or his emotional data was uploaded, and the Endo Daycare may have used it to create Freddy's core and main personality. When Freddy asks, "Was I always Freddy?" it might not just be about a reprogrammed robot, but instead it might be about the essence of the crying child's identity struggling inside the machine. The daycare where the Endo's child AIs were trained to act correctly could trigger hidden memories, which would then cause Freddy to glitch out and malfunction. It's also worth mentioning how Freddy is the only animatronic in Security Breach who wants to help Gregory. This is totally unheard of in FNAF and a feature unique to Security Breach. If Freddy is the crying child, or if he even carries his personality, then his protectiveness over Gregory would make sense in the story. Gregory could be seen as another version of me, meaning Freddy is trying to do for Gregory what no one else did for him when he was murdered. There are also a lot more parallels outside of their personalities. When Freddy brings Gregory to the first aid station, he tells him this.
I feel you are broken.
Don't worry about it, I'm fine.
No, I feel that something is wrong. I am taking you to the first aid station.
This is a direct reference to what we know William told the crying child in the hospital. He tells him, "You're broken." It's a direct parallel to FNAF 4, but this time the crying child is saying it to Gregory. And moving on to another direct parallel, we see it in the fact that Freddy loses his head in the canon ending. Now obviously the crying child doesn't actually lose his head to Fredbear, but every other time the crying child is referenced, his head is missing. Like above the sticky note room, where we see staff bots representing each member of the Afton family, and for the crying child the staff bot is missing their head. So again, I think Freddy missing his head is a parallel to the crying child. And in Ruin we see yet another parallel. The only time we encounter Glamrock Freddy in Ruin, he has a completely different design. Not only is he missing his head, but he also has a hole in his chest making a mouth. And what other animatronic in the entire franchise has a similar design where its stomach is a mouth? That's right, Nightmare Fredbear, who's also Golden Freddy, who of course is the crying child. His stomach even opens up when he's chasing Cassie, and I believe all this had to have been on purpose. So I don't think the soul of the crying child is directly possessing Freddy. Instead, I think it's a mix of his AI and information he learned of the crying child, which is what formed his personality, one so similar to the crying child's. Although we don't see the crying child actually return in Security Breach, we do see his personality return. And it can even serve as a reminder of what happened to him, as Glamrock Freddy is going to change it with Gregory's fate. But finally, moving on to the last Afton member and the last child of William, who and where is Elizabeth Afton in FNAF Security Breach? There are a lot of theories, with most of them revolving around a new character first introduced in Help Wanted, Vanessa. Right off the bat, when comparing their designs, they both have blonde hair and green eyes, and in the Princess Quest ending, Vanessa is seen holding an ice cream cone. A clear and obvious parallel to Elizabeth, who was lured by an ice cream cone by Circus Baby right before she was scooped. They also even parallel each other in the context of the story, as we know Scrap Baby wanted to make her dad, William, proud in the ending of Pizzeria Simulator.
Now we can do what we were created to do, and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy.
And we can assume Vanessa would also want to make Glitchtrap proud, who is also William. Vanessa goes around the Pizzaplex completing his orders and doing everything in her power to try to bring him back into the real world, as she even uses Glamrock Freddy to clear the path in the sinkhole, which would lead away to what would eventually be the charging station where Burntrap was being held. She even slept and lived down in the FNAF 6 pizzeria, as we find a bed, tally marks counting the days, and of course the Vanny logo spray painted on the wall. So if these two characters are obviously one and the same, now we need to start answering how and why Elizabeth came back. Elizabeth was put to rest in the FNAF 6 ending, and further confirming this is the Blob. The Blob is a mix of animatronic parts, wires, and masks, many masks that include the puppet, Mangle, and even Funtime Freddy at the face of it all. These masks all have red eyes, which would be a way of representing their anger or even agony, but the one animatronic and mask that doesn't have red eyes or even lit eyes in general is Circus Baby. Circus Baby doesn't have anger or agony. Her and Elizabeth have already been put to rest. There would also be no real reason for her to even come back. Unlike her sibling Michael, who has stayed alive alongside Fazbear's Entertainment to ensure the cycle isn't repeated again. Good job, Michael. Elizabeth, on the other hand, wouldn't really have a motive. Sure, she would still want to make William proud, but that would be more as Circus Baby or Scrap Baby, not as a soul possessing a human being. In the franchise, we actually never learn of souls directly possessing humans. If anything, they can only attach themselves to these humans. Like how Andrew attaches himself to William in the books, and is able to torture him mentally and follow him around. But there isn't any other character or animatronic that we can theorize Elizabeth would return through. Vanessa's the clear answer, but yet we still don't have an answer to how it's possible. Well, to find one, I now want to look at the CDs. Around the Pizzaplex, you can collect different CDs they can play in Michael's room. Each CD will play a therapy session about two different people, patients 46 and 71. Patient 71 was revealed to be Vanessa, and here we get a lot more context to how the Glitchtrap virus had affected her. We learn how Vanessa is isolated and guarded, which is why there's concern for her emotional well-being. She even seems to be scared of Glitchtrap because she states he's always watching. We also learn she had experience hacking, and how she had suspicious online activity, as she was purchasing fur to make a suit, the same Vanny suit we see throughout the game. Obviously, Glitchtrap changed her to be more like Elizabeth. In Hope Wanted, we learn about the very first playtester, a man named Jeremy, who was actually the first person to encounter Glitchtrap. Because of this, he begins to have nightmares, becomes numb to the game's jump scares, and this all leads to his own murder. So why didn't Glitchtrap choose Jeremy to be his puppet? Why wasn't it until Vanessa played the game that she was chosen, that the virus would take over her life? Well, it could be possible that William was reminded of Elizabeth, his beloved daughter, through Vanessa. They had the same eyes, hair, and the only thing that was missing was her personality. So Glitchtrap infected her, slowly making her more like his daughter. He would make her listen to his directions and even follow in his footsteps, similar to Elizabeth turning into Scrap Baby, a monstrous animatronic just like William, who was Scraptrap. He would force her to turn into Vanny, a person who would kidnap children and murder them, all while wearing a bunny-like suit. That could even be why Vanny's original jump scare sounded like a scream so similar to Turkish Baby's when Elizabeth was scooped. Elizabeth isn't actually alive. She's not possessing Vanessa, she has been put to rest and hasn't returned like Michael being alive or the crying child's personality returning in Freddy. Instead, William is almost forcing her to return as a completely new person, one that would listen to him. In terms of other theories, this one just makes the most sense. I don't think she's a lost Afton that we never heard of before, it just wouldn't make sense timeline-wise. I also don't think she's a robot version of Elizabeth. Yes, the books have plenty of evidence as parallels that could confirm this, but I think it makes more sense story-wise and narrative-wise that she's someone new. So this would mean that all Afton members do actually return. William Afton returns through Glitchtrap and Burntrap with the sole purpose of coming back. Michael Afton is still alive and lives with Fazbear's Entertainment, working with them while also keeping an eye on them. The crying child's personality returns through Glamrock Freddy, as he attempts to save Gregory as no one was able to do that for him. And Elizabeth Afton returns through a parallel of Vanessa, as Glitchtrap shapes and forms this new person to be just like his own daughter. Now I want to emphasize this video is just a theory. By no means did I come up with any of these theories on my own, nor is anything confirmed. The return of any of these characters is just speculation and it can go any way. But when looking at all of the evidence, I do think we can say they all return in some shape or another, some more direct than others. So what do you guys think? Make sure to comment down below any thoughts or theories. Also make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you guys so much for watching.